Good evening, Kenton community. My name is Sabatino Samato. I'm your superintendent, and this is your weekly connection update. Folks, we have a pretty detailed, lengthy connection this evening, so I want to prepare you, but there is a lot of very important information. First, for example, we're going to talk about changes to quarantine and isolation requirements, contact tracing. We're going to get into our new Test to Stay program. From there, we're going to absolutely talk about some resources for our families. We're going to round off today with, of course, our school highlights, including a recognition in our community for our community as a whole, and then finish off with our celebration of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Day coming up. So let's get going. First, recently, and when I say recently lately means within the past day or so, because things are changing so rapidly in this pandemic, in the guidance that we receive. So when I'm referring to recently, we just received, hot off the press, some new guidance last evening. And I want to clarify for our families what that means. And then I'm going to lead it into how it impacts our Test to Stay. So these changes in quarantine and isolation requirements are really what came out last night. And folks, I encourage you. I know that there's a lot in print here, but please take your time this week to read through our actual written, whether it's on the computer or you print it out, copy of the weekly connection, because you're going to see in there, for example, contact tracing, isolation, quarantine, and then there's a handy dandy little chart that really breaks it down for everyone. So contact tracing. I want to be clear. This change, you've heard changes recently within our counties, that contact tracing really is coming to an end. Now, in the schools, when it comes to contact tracing, I want our families to understand we're still going to look at our positive cases. We're still going to do contact tracing. We're still going to be notifying families of those who students who are exposed to positive cases in the classroom. Okay, so close contacts. Remember how close contacts are defined. If you're wearing a mask, which all of our students do, within 3 feet for more than 15 minutes within 24 hours, so less than 3 feet. If you're unmasked, it's less than 6 feet. So let's dig a little bit deeper into isolation and quarantine. A reminder, isolation refers to the case. So if you are positive, you've tested positive for COVID-19, that's when we use that term isolation. Contact is when we refer to the word quarantine. Contact equals quarantine, isolation equals positive case. Just to reiterate that and bring us back to some of these terms, because there's a lot of them. So when we're talking about close contacts, folks, positive cases, I think it's pretty self-explanatory. If somebody is tested positive, whether they're vaccinated or not, they are not in school. Now, staff or student, here's the difference. It's gone from 10 days of isolation to now 5 days. So that's for a positive case. Anybody who is tested positive for COVID-19, forget about vaccination status, 5 days, that's what we're looking at. Now, the close contact piece is where it really gets a little bit confusing. And that's why I want you to really look at this chart in writing. Because when you're a close contact, you have been identified as a close contact. For our younger kids, let's face it, our 5 to 11-year-olds, if they've been vaccinated, vaccination they just became eligible for vaccination. So they're not eligible for booster as of yet. So they're considered fully vaccinated if they've received that first round of vaccination. And if they're a close contact, they do not have to quarantine. Those are those 5 to 11-year-olds. It starts to get dicey once we get to the age 12 and up. 12 and up, if you've been fully vaccinated with your first, for Moderna, there were 2 shots. For Pfizer, there were 2 shots. For Johnson & Johnson, there was 1 shot. You're considered vaccinated, and you don't have to quarantine if you were a close contact. That hasn't changed. It gets a little bit different, though, now if you're eligible for a booster. If since your shot, you're eligible for booster, and please refer to the CDC guidance. Sometimes it's 6 months out, 5 months out from the shot, or 2 months out for Johnson & Johnson. If you're eligible for the booster, Granted, you don't have to quarantine during the school day. You still have to wear a well-fitted mask. But you do have to quarantine what they're saying during those 5 days for other activities, and that would include extracurriculars. So that's a big change. It's a lot to digest. These are the changes. This is what's coming out. This is what you'll see in the news. Once again, if you've received your first rounds of vaccination, you don't have to quarantine from school. But if you're eligible to be boosted and you haven't been boosted, you do still have to quarantine during extracurriculars. And we'll see how that continues to unfold, folks. Please really stay tuned. Now, the big thing is, for our families that have not chosen vaccination, and absolutely that is a choice. So what we've been able to do as a district to also try and assist those families and those kiddos, those staff members who have chosen and elected to not be vaccinated. Because now if you're deemed a close contact, according to CDC, according to our Erie County Department of Health, you would have to quarantine for 5 days. Well, that brings us to our next topic, and that's test to stay. Test to stay only exists for these people at this time in this district. And that means people who are unvaccinated, who have been deemed by our schools as a close contact to somebody who is tested positive. So let me say that again. Test to stay is only for those staff and students who are unvaccinated and deemed a close contact to someone who is tested positive. I know it's confusing. I hope you got it now. And at the time that you're deemed a close contact, your school will tell you if your child is eligible for test to stay. And what test to stay does is it keeps them out of quarantine, and they're able to come test before the school day begins. And as long as they're negative on that test, they can report to school and continue to report to school as long as they remain without symptoms and fever-free and have tested negative and test to stay. And in this document, you're going to see in our test to stay, it goes through all of the procedures. This is going to be lengthy, but I do want to take a moment and actually read off, go line by line, and talk about this program because of how important and, more importantly, how new it is to our entire community. The test to stay procedures will be as follows. You will be notified that your child is eligible for the test to stay when you are informed that your child's close contact status by the school nurse or school administrator. Please note, this program is only open to those students notified by the district of their eligibility. The first day of testing for the test to stay program will be the day after notification, or if not attending that day, the next day of attendance. Your child will not be able to attend school without being tested and receiving a negative result. If your child does not participate on day one, the very first day of testing would be the next day that your child wants to attend school. That is their day of testing. Once again, a reminder, folks, these are our unvaccinated students who have been deemed close contacts to a positive case. The parent or guardian must be present for the test. If the parent or guardian cannot be present, the child will not be able to be tested. Now, just to break it down, we will have one central testing location in our district. That will be at Kenmore Middle School. The window for testing will be every morning, Monday through Friday, from 6 a.m. until 8:15 a.m. Now, you won't have to report every day for testing. You're reporting on that first day that you're told to go, and then on that last day of what would have been your quarantine period. And your school will demystify that for you parents every time that we have a case. But once again, the testing window is in the morning. I know that's a challenge for parents, but once again, this is a strategy to keep kids out of quarantine, and it's something that we're offering to our families. The size of our district, we have to have one central location. And folks, let me be very clear. As we do this, if we can change it and make it even more convenient, we're going to continue to do so. And who knows, the way that some of our changes have been coming down because things have been changing so rapidly during this pandemic as of lately, we may be changing a lot of these procedures within the next week, sometimes even days. So just stay tuned. But for right now, it is at Kenmore Middle It runs Monday through Friday from 6 to 8:15 a.m. And it has to happen in the morning before school, 6 to 8:15 a.m. And you'll see a chart there. We're actually encouraging, and it follows when our kiddos go to school. Our high schoolers are the first ones to report to school, so therefore we're asking for our high schoolers to come sometime between 6 and 6:45 in the morning. Our middle schoolers will be sometime between 6:45 and 7:30, and our elementary school students sometime between 7:30 and 8:15 in the morning. Now, folks, remember, only students who have been told to report because they are a close contact. This is not all of our students in the district. Only those who are close contact and those who wish to attend and avoid quarantine at that time. So parents, if you say, yeah, my child's a close contact, but you know what, Samato, I don't want them going to test to stay. They're going to quarantine for these 5 days. Absolutely, that is your choice. This is another resource for parents who have been identified, those of unvaccinated students who are deemed close contacts. You'll enter at Kenmore Middle off of Myron Avenue at the rear of the building and follow the signs. You'll enter through door 5. Parents or guardians will need to complete a hard copy consent form. So you can print that form off ahead of time. We'll have extra copies there, but that'll be your consent. That's why the parent or guardian has to be there. If your child tests negative, your child will get a slip of paper, and that day when they go to school, they bring it right in, they report to the nurse, give them that slip of paper, they're good to go. They can even, folks, if you get them home soon enough, they can even ride the bus to school that day, if that's more convenient, because I know all of our families, of course, we all work, so we're trying to make this so that it can work to the best given the circumstances. Participating students, once again, can continue to attend. Now, at any time during those 5 days, folks, even if you're in test to stay, if your child becomes symptomatic, or let's say they test positive, then it's a different story. They're no longer in test to stay. They should, if they were symptomatic, they should go and seek a test with your healthcare provider. Make sure, get a PCR, do whatever you got to do. If they tested positive in our system during test to stay, they would then follow the isolation protocols, not quarantine. Remember that difference. Isolation for positives, quarantine for close contacts. If your child develops symptoms, that's that last bullet. You could read on it there. Additional information on test to stay, as well as changes to quarantine and isolation requirements and new mitigation measures such as distributing tests and KN95 masks were discussed at this last Tuesday's board meeting. I have a link right in the connection this week to our board meeting from this past Tuesday, because we talked about all of that and why we gave out kits. We had 3 different types of kit distribution. 2 where families could come pick them up. 1 where you could sign up to get them sent home in your child's backpack. That was a huge success. We're trying to do everything that we can these past 2 weeks, folks, to give you any of the resources that we can to keep students in school and to keep us moving through this pandemic. Now, I have a good feeling. I know that's weird to say during all of this craziness right now, but I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful that we're going to get through these next couple weeks, this difficult time together. We've done it before together, and we'll get through these weeks, and then hopefully we see just a better time on the horizon coming out of this. And speaking of that board meeting from this past week, we also highlighted a new resource, another thing for parents and for families and for kiddos, our Kenton Safe School Helpline. This is a service that's open up to our families and to students in the event of. That's the way I like to look at it, in the event of. It's another resource. Please take a look at it there. But safety for everyone is everyone's priority. And it's all of our responsibility. And that's what this helpline is about. Whether it's a child in need or in distress, whether it's you see something and you need to say something, whether it's just a parent that's needs the help that they may need at that time, because we all know that raising children, especially in 2022, can be a challenge. That's what that Safe School Helpline is there for. So please utilize it, and it is a resource for our Kenton families. You'll then notice in the connection that we have some wonderful school highlights this week. Franklin Elementary School and Kenmore West High School are both highlighted in there. Please take a look at those highlights. It leads us to actually our recognition this week. And our recognition, folks, I know this is this sounds different, this type of recognition. But I really want to recognize our Kenton community that come to our board meetings. And what I mean by this, I wish to recognize the entire Kenton community for the manner in which you continue to express your views and opinions with civility. There are many complicated issues that we're facing in which people disagree, such as masks, vaccination, pretty much everything that deals with COVID-19. Many people in our community have spoken about these issues at Board of Education meetings, and they have done so respectfully. Despite how strongly they feel about these topics and the fact that these issues have proven to be contentious in other venues, our speakers consistently express their viewpoints while remaining civil. Our Board of Education meetings are a perfect example of how people can express opinions but still be considerate and tolerant of different points of view. This demonstrates excellent character and is exactly what we hope to model for our students. I sincerely appreciate this, and I really know that our board sincerely appreciates everyone who has taken time out of their day to attend and speak at a board meeting, regardless of the topic. It's extremely important that we always listen to one another, even if we don't always agree. It is important that we remember that in disagreement, we always continue to learn and grow as a community, and that is what has been exemplified time and time again at our board meetings. So thank you to our community, especially our Board of Education and everyone who attends, for just really helping all of us to continue to learn and grow from each other. And it brings us finally to really remembering, talking about our community, why we don't have school this coming Monday. This coming Monday is a very important day as we remember that on Monday, January 17th, we are celebrating the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. We honor Dr. King on the third Monday in January each year to preserve his dream of bringing peace and equality to everyone, as it has become our collective dream. Dr. King worked his entire life to end persecution and discrimination in America and ultimately sacrificed his life to do so. It is extremely important that we all take a few minutes this weekend to reflect on Dr. King's legacy and teachings. We all need to have conversations with our children about why it's so important to honor Dr. King in such a way that and what we can do in our daily lives to continue his work. There are a great deal of valuable resources maintained by the Martin Luther King Jr. Research and Education Institute at Stanford University that may be of interest to people in our community. Many of these resources are available to everyone free of charge at the website kinginstitute.stafford.edu. So folks, that brings us to a close, and I think in many ways Dr. Martin Luther King really exemplifies what Kenton is all about. And it's that life of service. Dr. King had that life of service. So many in Kenton have that life of service. Here in the schools, there at home, we have to remember always doing to serve others. And during these difficult times, that is what's going to get us through. And let's remain hopeful. We know that better times are ahead of us. We're going through a little bit of a rough patch right now, but we know that schools are the safest place to be, and we know that we continue to forge ahead, and we're going to make Kenton strong. We're going to make Kenton better. We're going to move Kenton forward together. Have a wonderful weekend. Stay warm. It's going to be a cold one tomorrow. Enjoy that football team. Go Bills, and let's make sure that we continue to be safe and do it together as one Kenton. Have a great weekend.